So we're just going to kind of camp out on the whole marriage thing a little bit. And as always, there are principles in the things that I share that you can apply to your life, even if you are single. And we want you to know that if you're single, we love you. If you're divorced, we love you. If you come from a blended family, we love you. And so we started out this whole series kind of camping out on the whole subject that love is a verb. And love is a verb. That's such a catchy phrase, isn't it? You thought that I came up with that? I didn't. I got it from DC Talk off their album back in the 1990s. Anyway, love is a verb, L-O-V-E, and all that junk that you see on TV. Anyway, so, okay. And so we're kind of learning that we can't take our cue on how to love our spouse from the culture that we live in, because our culture does not really have a very healthy perspective or outlook on what it is to love people. And love is all about, at least in our culture, hey baby, what can you do for me? How can you make me feel? But we're finding out love is not a feeling, love is an action. It's something that you do for the other person. And then last week we kind of camped out on the topic of mutual submission, that in a marriage, a good marriage, there's mutual submission. We defer to the other person, we serve the other person, we make the other person feel as though they are the most important person, that when they walk in the room, there's a sense of awe, because you had awe when you were dating. Did you see her? Awe. Did you see him? Awe. Did you see what he was driving? Awe. Did you see what she was driving? Oh. Anyway, so we treat the other person in the marriage, in any relationship, as if they are the most important. And you know why we do that? Because we've always done that. We did that when we were first dating. And if you're married, the reason that you're married is because you thought they were the most important person in the world. I mean, you don't marry somebody unless they're the most important person in your world. You found that person, you met that person, there was emotions, you fell in love, you started hanging out with each other, you decided you're the most important person in the whole world, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. And so you started treating them that way. And some of you, do you remember the wedding day? Remember the wedding day? This is the amazing thing that happens in marriage. So you remember the wedding day, and there's planning and planning and planning, money and money and money, and planning and planning and planning. Finally, that special day comes, and you're standing up the front. You men, you're standing up at the front, and the wedding party's all up here. And then she walks through the doors into the sanctuary, wherever you got married. And you remember when you first saw her in that white dress? Oh, the whole kind of thing. And then they walked down the aisle and they come up the steps and they stand before the preacher and before all the people watching. And these people make promises to each other. They make promises to you, the people watching the wedding. They make promises to the pastor. They make promises before the pastor. They make promises before God and to God. They make all these promises. And then the first days together are just magical. It's the honeymoon period. You remember that whole thing? The honeymoon, it's just great. And everything's great. She looks great. He looks great. Everything's great. It's a lot of fun. And then how is it that these same two people that made promises before God, somewhere along the line, now they can't even stand to be in the same room with each other. They hate each other. There's this visceral reaction. They just can't stand each other. And you say, what happened to you guys? You were so in love. Like, everybody looked at you. You were the couple. What's going on in your marriage? Why can't you stand him? You can't. And if you ask the questions, they'll answer the question with, like, well, Pastor, he just ain't the same man he was when we got married. Oh, Pastor, Doris ain't the same woman that stood at that altar up there. And I would say, well, yes, she is. And yes, he is. They are the same people that you married. No, Pastor, different. Nope, they're the same person that you married. And so in a marriage relationship, all of these emotions start to become unearthed that we didn't even know that were there. And we can have this visceral reaction about this person that we're married to. They make me so mad. We can hear about tragedies in the world, great, the hurricanes or earthquakes or tornadoes. And it's like, oh, man, that's just so sad. But when somebody brings up the name of our ex, like that brings up a whole different emotion altogether right there. So the question is, how can these two people who were emotionally so intimate, physically intimate, move from that intimacy to this place where they hate each other, they abuse each other, verbally, physically? There's this violence in the relationship, and I don't want this anymore. And so then what happens? That two couple, they decide, I'm just going to walk. I'm done. I'm leaving the marriage. I can't stand it anymore. I can't tolerate the pain. I can't tolerate so we're just done. And so we walk, and a year later, they're in love with somebody else. And we have seen that pattern in our lives. Maybe that describes your marriage. That happens over and over and over again. We see it happening a lot. Here's my question for that. Why not fall in love with the person you married in the first place all over again? It's a lot cheaper and it's easier. Why not just fall in love with this person you fell in love with once all over again? And so we kind of started with the question a couple of weeks ago, is it possible for two people to fall in love and just stay in love? To have that person in your life that's more than just a fishing buddy or somebody we go ride motorcycle with, but I mean this person that there is this emotional intimacy with that you have with nobody else. And I think all of us long for that, all of us want that, but here's the difficulty. Here's the challenge in relationships. In fact, I feel a little silly preaching. I mean, the couple that's been married 40 years could come up here and tell you this story and go, yeah, Pastor, this is what it is. You have to put the other person first. You have to think about their needs. We got to put that person first. And that can be hard to do in a relationship, though. It can be hard to put the other person first in a relationship because that's what love does if our heart isn't healthy. And so we're going to talk for a few moments about the health of our heart this morning. We're going to look at a few verses in the book of Proverbs, just some select verses in Proverbs that really just talk about our heart for a little bit. Because if your heart isn't healthy, you don't have a healthy relationship. And your relationship, your marriage, has so much to do with the condition of your heart, not just how you behave in your marriage, but how you behave in your heart. I like what Proverbs chapter 15, verse 15 says. Look at this. We'll put it up on the screen for you. For the despondent, not like this, for the despondent, we're talking about the heart now, for the despondent, every day brings trouble. But for the happy heart, life is a continual feast. This is really the pessimist versus the optimist. One person sees opportunity in challenges. The other person sees disaster when there's challenges. One person sees the glass half full. The other person always sees it half empty. And it all has to do with what's inside the heart. You know, I heard a story the other day about a guy who had a pessimistic friend, and he really wanted to cheer up his pessimistic friend. He decided what could be better than to buy him a loyal friend. And so he goes to the pet store and he says to the pet store owner, he says, I want to buy my pessimistic friend like the ideal pet, something that will encourage him and help him see the brighter side of life all the time. And the pet store owner says, I have the perfect pet for that friend. Believe me, I've got a dog here that can walk on water. No, he does. It's an incredible thing. So he buys the dog. He takes the dog and his pessimistic friend. They go out along the lake one day, and he wants to kind of showcase the dog a little bit. And so he starts throwing a stick out in the water. And the dog runs out on top of the water and fetches a stick. And he does this repeatedly to just prove to his pessimistic friend what an incredible dog this is. And he wants to give the dog to his friend. He says to his friend, do you notice anything about this dog that's a little unusual? And his pessimistic friend said, yeah, he can't swim. See? He had a despondent heart. The heart, understand this, the heart leads our lives. It affects our perspective on everything, including the person to whom we're married. Now, understand this. There are some influencing factors that have imprinted your heart. Some influencing factors that have imprinted your heart. When you got married, you brought your past into the marriage. And the things of your past influenced the condition of your heart. Let me ask you this. Before you got married, what was your home life like? Maybe in your home, somewhere along the line, there was a tragedy. Somebody tragically was killed in an accident. And now suddenly, because of some sort of tragic death, there's this other person that lives in the house. Maybe it was because there was a chronic illness in the house. Maybe your dad or your mom was an abuser. Maybe you were sexually abused. Maybe mom or dad or both were an alcoholic, or maybe they were an addict. Maybe dad was emotionally absent even though he was physically present. Maybe your dad was the authoritarian dad. Maybe your mom was the overbearing mom. All of us have a story to tell about what we bring into our marriage from our past and from our upbringing. All of whom, your parents might have been a mess. Your parents might have been a mess. But they were doing the best that they could. They were parenting you the way they were parented. They brought their baggage, their past, into their marriage, and then they had offspring, you, and now they're bringing all of that, and you have been influenced by all of that. Maybe you were abandoned. Maybe you were orphaned. Maybe you were left behind. I don't know where you fit in the whole thing, but somewhere along the line, something had an influence or an impact on your heart. Or maybe you just grew up in that ideal home. It was a perfect home, but all of it had an effect on your heart. And so now you get married. And now you get married, you're in this dating relationship, though maybe before you get married, you're in this dating. And here's what we do when we're dating. You know what we're dating? We always put our best foot forward. We are so careful to hide the baggage of our past from the person that we're dating in the present. Because we want to give the best impression. We don't want them to know about all the things of our past. And so we're so careful to hide and protect these things. And, maybe there's little glimpses of it, but nobody sees it, because when you're dating, you always give the benefit of the doubt to the person that you're dating. They're never moody. They're just intense. He doesn't have anger issues. He's just really a determined person. But these things that we make allowances for them when we're dating. We're trying to put our best foot forward. And then we get married. And something happens. So I brought a married couple with me to help me illustrate exactly what I mean today. Pastor Angie helped me decorate these cups to illustrate my message today. And so this is Mr. and Mrs. Solo. Okay? This is Doris. And this is Han Solo. Okay. Couldn't resist. Okay? And they're like you, they've been dating, and they're all just close. You can tell when people are newlyweds or when they're dating because they're always together. When they've been married for more than a year, you always see the husband, you seen my wife anywhere? You know, they're never together, but these two are still dating. And it's a great little marriage. Lots of love. They like that kind of thing. Just lots of love and lots of romance. And then there's one little thing in the marriage, one little thing, just a comment. Something happens. And a comment is made, and one of them gets bumped. They're out for a nice evening together. And the waitress that waits on them, she's a cutie pie. And she just keeps making all these eyes at Han over here, Mr. Solo, that whole kind of thing. And all of a sudden, Mrs. Solo gets bumped, and she is just mad as a hornet that this little waitress is paying attention. And so now she's bumped. Well, I didn't know you had such an eye for the ladies. Boom. Stuff is bumped. She's bumped. Stuff comes out of here. Well, I didn't know you were so jealous. Boom. Bumped. Stuff comes out of him. Well, I didn't know you were such a control freak. Boom. Stuff comes out of there. Well, I didn't know when we were dating you were going to have so many headaches. When we were married, boom. Stuff comes out of there. I didn't know that you were a control freak. Boom. Stuff comes out of there. See, and all of the baggage that they brought with them, they brought into the marriage. And it never comes out until they got bumped. And when we were dating, you were so sure that none of that stuff existed. But now you're married. And all these things just come bumping out of there. Somebody's going to have to pick up all that stuff, okay? Okay. There you go. And everybody in this room who's been married for any length of time goes, yeah, Pastor, it's exactly the way it goes. And see, the things that you brought into your marriage, the baggage that came from your childhood, the baggage that came from past breakups, the baggage that came from other sexual relationships, the baggage that came from sexual abuse, the baggage that came from the alcoholic parent, the baggage that came from the abusive parent, the baggage that came from the absent parent, all of that comes into the marriage. And when the conditions are just right, we get bumped, and then we express our anger. Well, she's moody, you're jealous, you don't want to do anything together. You put up these walls, he never talks, and every time there's a fight, you make an accusation. You make me feel this way. This was never a problem until I married you. I never had these issues until I married you. And all of this stuff comes not out of our past, but out of our heart. A lot of people don't have marriage problems. They have heart problems. You see, Proverbs chapter 27, here's another one I'll show you on the screen. Proverbs 27 says this, as a face is reflected in the water, or we could say in a mirror, so the heart reflects the real person. And nothing, nothing like a marriage, there's nothing like a marriage to reveal what's really on the inside of you. Because you come to church on Sunday and you all look good. Don't you look good? You all look good. Everybody looks happy. When you walk through the doors of the church, every marriage is great. You've all got a wonderful marriage, a happy home life. Everything is perfect, perfect. And we put on our little churchy smile and everything's good. And then we get back and we just barely get up. But like it's just silence between the door and the car. And you almost dread the door shutting to the car and the drive to the restaurant or the drive home because it's just tense in there. And you know what it is. There's nothing like a marriage relationship to really expose the things that are on the inside of us. And we become convinced that the person that we married, it's their problem. It's all because of them. And so then you come into my office and they'd say, well, I don't think it's because of them at all. I think, no. This is because there's heart stuff going on. There's things that you brought with you from your past. And so you say, Pastor, what are we supposed to do? Well, the writer of Proverbs, and we've referenced this proverb before, but it's so profound and so simple. But we need to apply this. Look what the writer of Proverbs says in Proverbs chapter 4, verse number 23. He says this, guard your heart above all else. In other words, if you've got a to-do list tomorrow, if you've got a to-do list today, if you've got a to-do list for your life, the first thing you put at the top of the list is you will protect your heart. And there's a lot of different ways that we can protect our heart, but that's got to be the first priority. In other words, pay attention to what's inside your heart. This doesn't matter if you're single or if you're married. All of us have to pay attention to what's on the inside. Let me ask you this. Here's a hard question for all of us, myself included, to answer. What is your strategy for protecting your heart? Do you have one? Do you know what it is? And if you don't know what that strategy is, the writer of Proverbs says you better get a strategy. Because there's a lot of things that compete for your heart. People want your heart. Things want your heart. Extramarital affairs want your heart. Debt wants your heart. A lot of things want your heart. And so he says, you got to protect that heart. You see, it's important that you do. But if you don't protect your heart, if you don't realize what's in your heart, you know what you're going to do? You're going to blame other people for your problems. This isn't my problem. This is their problem. And you know what's so interesting about this? This has been their problem in every single one of my relationships. In every marriage I've been in, it's always been their problem. And it seems to be the same problem in every marriage. Well, if you've got the same problem in every relationship, in every marriage, whose problem is it? It's probably a heart issue that you possess. Here's what I know about you and me. We're not very good about monitoring what's inside of our own hearts, but we're really good at monitoring the behavior of other people. Okay? This is their problem. It's their issue. And here's what I know about all of us as well. We all want to feel a special way. All of us in this room want to feel pretty and smart and affirmed and valued and needed. And when you were first dating, that person did that for you. That's why you kept dating them. She's amazing, isn't she? She's just amazing. Oh, I just feel so secure and so safe with him. And you know what I love about him? He's just that quiet, silent type, you know? And after you've been married for a little while, I can't stand it. The guy never says a thing. Just quiet all the time. Shuts up, just like a clam. Never says anything, you know? Well, can't stand Doris neither. Yap, 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 yap. That's all it is, all the time. See? We just can't stand it. And so then when we no longer get the feelings that we want from them, we try to squeeze this out of them. There's a heart issue that we have. And you're no longer meeting the needs and the desires that I have in mind. You're not making me feel pretty or smart or valued anymore. And so I guess I married the wrong person. I need to go find somebody else that will make me feel pretty and smart and affirmed and valued and all that kind of stuff. But you never did anything to monitor what's inside of your heart. So you get out of this relationship and you jumped into this relationship and it's all just magic for a little while. And then somewhere in the relationship you realize this is just like the last one. It's the same thing all over again. And so he tries to squeeze out of that person to fill what's missing inside of us. They don't fill my need anymore. In fact, all she does is just bump me. They just bump me. He just bumps me. He just bugs me. And all this stuff comes out all the time. Listen, the condition of your heart it affects the condition of your marriage. Your ability to stay in love has as much to do with the condition of your heart as it does with the behavior you have towards one another. So you need to monitor your heart. And here's why. Here's the first part of that verse. We say we need to guard our heart above everything else. That's number one on the to-do list. And here's the reason why. Look at the second part of that. Because your heart determines the course of your life. There's a value in knowing what's inside of your heart, because if you know what's inside of your heart, you can kind of get a better fix on the direction of your relationships. You can get a better fix on the direction of your life. You've got to know what's on the inside of your heart. And your relationships, all of your relationships flow out of the contents of your heart. And again, I'm not here to point fingers at this stuff. Like, if you got junk in your heart, I'm not here to point fingers and say, boy, yeah, you're a terrible person for having that junk. Look, we come from a past. We got a past. And we can cast a judgment on somebody pretty quickly. But when you hear their story, you start to understand why all this stuff comes out when they get bumped. Well, it's like, man, their parents were a mess. Do you know why their parents were a mess? Because their parents were a mess. And do you know why their parents were a mess? Because their parents were a mess. And do you know why their parents were a mess? Because their parents' parents were a mess. I don't know how much further to go with that before I get messed up. But it just goes generation by generation. Until Jesus steps in and transforms the heart, nothing changes. So again, like Proverbs 15:15 says, for the despondent, every day just brings trouble. It just brings trouble. But for those who have a happy heart, life is a continual feast. Yeah. Well, it's the same world for everybody. It's just some live in a happy place and some don't. Heart issues are so easy to see in other people, though, aren't they? It's so difficult to see in ourselves. And so here's a prayer that I want you guys to pray. God, show me my heart. Show me my heart. And here's the incredible thing. God might show it to you through your spouse. God might show you what's in your heart through crisis in your life. If you don't know what's in your house, the person in your heart, if you don't know what's in your heart, the person you're married to, they could make a list. Okay? Like I said, it's easy to identify in other people, so hard to see in ourselves. But what's in your heart comes out no matter who you're with. And so now let's just make this practical as we kind of wrap things up here. And when I say wrap things up, I've still got 15 minutes left. I'm just kidding. Okay. So let's make this really practical. What are you supposed to do? When you get bumped in a marriage relationship or in a friendship or this could be any relationship. When you get bumped, I want you right there in that moment, this takes a little discipline, stop and think about the emotion that has just erupted inside of you in that moment. Just stop and think about the emotion that has erupted on the inside of you in that moment. Now, guys, hang with me for a little bit. Just hang with me. When I talk about emotions, I'm talking about feelings. And I know when I talk to men, feelings is a foreign language. I understand that because men are born intrinsically. We only have 3 feelings. Men are born with 3 feelings. Tired, hungry, and baby, you look good. What are you doing right now? Those are the only 3 feelings we're born with. So men, bear with me a little bit. You got to think about your feelings, okay? Think about those. So 2 things you need to do when you get bumped. First of all, just name the feeling. I don't care if this is in your marriage. I don't care if this is in a friendship. Just stop and name the feeling. Maybe you don't want to name it out loud right away, but before you even open your mouth, name the feeling. I feel embarrassed. I feel belittled. I feel ugly. I feel like a failure. I feel betrayed. I feel unloved. I feel angry. I feel jealous. I feel scared. I feel insecure. You name it right there. Just stop right there. Before you do anything, like you got bumped. Somebody said something, the circumstances were just right. You went out and she said this, he did that, whatever the case is, and boom, this emotion just erupts out of your cup. Name the feeling. And when you do this, as soon as you name the emotion that comes out, you will begin to understand what's in your heart. And then when you do this, that emotion, when you name the emotion, it begins to lose its power. But understand this. Sometimes we don't want to name the emotion because we want to keep that power. We want to keep that power over that person in that relationship. We want them to feel belittled. We want them to feel like a failure. We want them to feel embarrassed. We want to feel a sense of power over the top of them. I'm not going to name that feeling, but you name the feeling. Honey, right now I feel. And that leads to the second thing that you do. Number two. Number one, you name the feeling. Number two, you tell your spouse what you feel. Honey, right now, when you said that, when you did that, I just feel really scared right now. I feel insecure. I feel angry. I feel hurt. I feel betrayed. I feel embarrassed. And you know what? Your spouse, now I'm just giving you a little pastoral, little fatherly instruction here. When you name that emotion, your husband, your wife is going to be so happy that you said that. Do you know why? Because they're offering you information that you didn't have a moment ago. Oh, that's why you're a jerk. I get it now. I didn't know that. I thought you were just a jerk. There's a reason that you're a jerk. Oh, that's why you're moody and have headaches all the time. I get it now. I never had that information before. And suddenly you named it. And understand this, when that person names, look right now in this moment, it's not a matter of saying, you made me feel. Right now I feel. And when they say, this is what I feel scared, I feel insecure, I feel betrayed, I feel jealous, that's not a criticism of you, it's an observation. They're not criticizing you, they're just simply offering you information. This is what they feel, and it's just their feeling. They get to pick, all of us in this room always get to pick how we feel. Isn't that great? I get to choose how I feel in every instance, but it's not a criticism, it's just information. And then when they say, oh, I feel betrayed, I feel hurt, I feel jealous, I feel scared, I feel insecure, you know what you say? I'm so glad you told me. I'm so glad you told me. Thank you for revealing the contents of your heart to me. You know what you don't say? You know what you don't? And then when you say that, I'm so thankful that you told me. And then you say no more. Just done. Thank you for telling me. And then you say no more. Here's what you don't say. You don't say, well, you shouldn't feel that way. Well, I'm sorry that you feel that way. Because you know what you did just then? If they come to you and say, I feel belittled right now, well, you shouldn't feel that way. Well, you just made them feel smaller. And when men feel small, ladies, listen, when men feel small, when you belittle a man feels disrespected. When he's disrespected, he gets angry. And when a man gets angry, he gets quiet. You want to know why he doesn't say anything and he builds up walls around himself? Because he feels this tall when he's around you. And every time you talk to him just like a mom. Did you pick up your shirt? How come you leave your towel on the floor all the time? Did you pick up the kids? Remember to pick this up after work today. You got to do this and the whole list, it just goes on and on and on. And in that moment, guys, you say, I feel like you're my mama right now. Stop talking to me like mama because I feel belittled and insecure. And the wife says, I'm so glad you told me that. Because now I'm going to change my behavior towards you. Amen. I love this stuff. This is good. All right, so now that you have the information about how the other person feels, you can start talking about stuff that's always been in the heart. It's now revealed. Most people don't have marriage problems. They've got heart problems. That's where it's all at. So you guard your heart. Let me ask you this. You guard your heart. Let me ask you this. What inputs are putting things into your heart right now? Do you allow your entertainment to put stuff in your heart? The stuff you read, the stuff you listen to, the stuff you watch? Do you keep letting your past put stuff into your heart? Do you let other relationships put stuff into your heart? Do you let your imagination put stuff in your heart? We've got to think about it. We've got to guard it because everything we do and say comes from our heart. So we pay attention to those feelings when we're bumped. And when you pay attention to the feelings when you're bumped, you're going to name it, you're going to share it, and you're going to defeat it.